Hey guys, I'm the MMA Breakdown, and today we're doing predictions for UFC Fight Night 95, Cyborg versus Lansberg. Follow me on Twitter. My link is in the description at MMA Breakdown 0. Also, check out my predictions for the event taking place before this one, Fight Night 94, Poirier versus Johnson. The link to that will also be in the description. There's some fun matchups on this card, some meaningful fights that need to happen, but for the most part, I wish that I would rather have that this event not take place. Now, lightweight, Franca versus Gregor Gillespie. Gillespie's a newcomer, and Franca was the winner of Tough Brazil 4, and thank God there hasn't been a fifth season of that. But Franca, no one likes those guys or gives any of those fighters any respect from Tough Brazil, especially the most recent season. But Franca, I don't think is bad. He's a grappler, pretty aggressive grappler, good positional grappler. Out-grappled Fernando Bruno to win the finale. Eventually submitted him. It was a competitive back and forth fight, and Bruno is not a high level guy. So Franca is certainly not some really hot prospect. But against James Vick, I thought he had his moments. Was able to land some big overhands on the feet a few times. Was able to hit a few takedowns. But Vick, did have the better moments on the ground and on the feet. Really used his length to outstrike him. So I don't know Gillespie, but Franca I think is a pretty solid grappler at least, and seemed to have a bit of striking against Vick. But yeah, I don't know. I'm not going to make a pick for this one on this video. At welterweight, Eric Silva versus Luque Chagas. Chagas, he fought Sergio Moraes in his debut, and he dropped him at one point. I think it was the second round with a head kick, but that was about all the success he had. Moraes was able to come back from that and out-grapple him, get him in scrambles, and even on the feet, started to pushed the pace and came forward and was taking the fight to him. So I was thinking initially, because Eric Silva's been on a decline and he's been knocked out several times pretty badly, and in his last fight that was probably the worst one. But I was thinking that Chagas might be able to catch Silva if he's more aggressive and seem like he wants to engage in a brawl. I thought I could catch Silva, but if he couldn't finish off Moraes after having him hurt and couldn't catch him again in that fight, I don't think he's going to be able to do it to Silva. And getting out grappled by Moraes, maybe technically a better grappler than Silva, but Silva, he goes for the submission every time early in the fight, but on the ground, always going for the kill. I think that on the ground, Silva will be able to submit him and will probably be able to take him down. So I like Silva to get back to his usual ways of getting the fight to the ground early, and he's aggressive on the feet early too. Even against Matt Brown, hurt him early in the fight. Probably I don't like his chances to strike with Chagas, and he has been on a decline. But I think that early in the fight he can come out aggressive, get Chagas down, and submit him. So I'm taking Silva by early, maybe first round submission. At lightweight, Alan Patrick versus Stevie Ray. This is a really good matchup, and Patrick will definitely be Ray's stiffest test so far in the UFC. I really like what we've seen from Ray. From his debut win, I think over Marcin Bandel, showed real strong. He was really strong from top position. He was able to get position on Bandel, control him, and then pounded him out. Had really strong ground and pound. And against Mafra in his next fight, looked really good. Came out and was striking with him and caught him early and put him away. His fight with Mikel Labuda in his last fight, not a great showing. But I like Ray. I think he's aggressive. He has power. Physically strong on the ground. Patrick's going to be bigger than him. He's going to have an athletic advantage probably a strength advantage. But Patrick just hasn't been impressive. Had a knockout over Garrett Whiteley in his debut, and I think Whiteley was just way overmatched, and that name doesn't. No one even recognizes that name today. And since then, just hasn't really had a good win. The Makdessi fight, I did not think he won, and that was a very uneventful fight. Got knocked out by Mairbek Taisumov in the first round. And then in his last fight against Damian Brown, an Australian fighter making his debut, that no one was really hyped about. He out-grappled him. He got him to the ground, but never really hurt him. And, won a decision against a smaller guy. And Brown even was able to take him down at times and hold position on him for a bit. So have not been impressed with Patrick, but I do think he has size on Ray. I think he'll be able to probably get him down and have some success grappling with him. But Ray is just the more dangerous fighter. I think more aggressive, and eventually I think Patrick will wilt, and Ray's gonna put him away. So I like Ray by, I'll say, a late, maybe third round TKO. But he did struggle with Laboot, who's not in the UFC, and Patrick I think is definitely a cut above that. Will definitely be a stiff test for Ray. Patrick could be big enough that Ray can't get him down, can't muscle him around. Patrick could just out-grapple him, out-wrestle him for 3 rounds. On the feet, I do think Ray's better, but Patrick has length, and he can hit hard as well. But, Ray's just been more dangerous. So, like I said, I like him for a late third-round knockout. On to the FS1 prelim card at welterweight, Vicente Luque versus Hector Urbina. Vicente Luque has been impressive, really redeemed himself from his first loss to Hader Hassan in the rematch. Looked great, very crisp striking, was able to walk him down, land on him, and then I think locked up an anaconda on the feet and then pulled back to finish him. And Urbina, just not a UFC level fighter. I don't really know why he's here. He was on Tough 19. Had a pretty ugly fight against Pendred where he was out grappled. Did not have cardio to go 2 rounds with Pendred, and then submitted was it Edgar Garcia in his debut, but even he was out grappling Urbina early, and then Bartosz Fabinski just dominated him, held him down, out-wrestled him at will for that fight. And Urbina, a guy who's supposed to be a good wrestler and grappler, or at least that's supposed to be his specialty, just seems like he's always on his back. Luque, he's going to outclass him here. Should be the way better striker, and maybe not as good a wrestler, but on the ground definitely the more skilled submission fighter. So I like Luque to just dominate him everywhere here pretty much, and I like him to get another submission. Has a good Darson Anaconda choke, so I like Luque to get a submission. And then at flyweight, Jussier Formiga versus Dustin Ortiz. This for me is by far the most meaningful fight and the most compelling matchup on the card. I think this is a pretty similar matchup to Ortiz's last fight against Wilson Hayes. Formiga should be better on the ground. He has a win over Hayes. I believe that was his last fight. On the feet, might not. He doesn't throw the volume that Heist throws, and it's not going to be as aggressive. But technically, Formiga is not a bad striker. Has had some bad knockout losses to Benavidez and Dodson, but Ortiz certainly isn't that level of striker. And Ortiz, I think, at best is just kind of a mediocre striker. Did go 3 rounds with Benavidez, but he's just kind of able to, keep himself from getting hurt. He was able to survive, but didn't really make the fight competitive on the feet. So yeah, I don't see Ortiz having a striking advantage. He might be more aggressive, throw more volume, and could score points on Formiga, but I don't see him hurting Formiga. And then on the ground, Ortiz is a solid wrestler, but we saw against Heist, that game is just not going to work against a high-level jiu-jitsu guy. Heist was able to out-grapple him, out-wrestle him even. And Formiga, like I already mentioned, he has a win over Heist where he out-grappled him. And, the fight against Zach Makovsky, another really solid American wrestler, he was just able to ride his back all day. So I like Formiga to have the advantage on the ground as well, grappling. He's great in scrambles, great at taking the back. Ortiz is a solid wrestler, but has only really been dominant against other guys who couldn't wrestle, like Willie Gates, Jose Maria Tomei. I like Formiga to win this fight. I worry about the aggression of Ortiz, but Ortiz isn't going to have the boxing of Cejudo, and Formiga's just it's a high-level jiu-jitsu guy. Ortiz's wrestling is not going to nullify that. I really don't see it. So I like Formiga for a decision here. All right, at bantamweight, Yahya versus Michinori Tanaka. This to me is it's a similar matchup to Yahya versus Matthew Lopez, who fought in his last fight. Tanaka's a good scrambler. He's a good grappler, but not the level of Yahya. And he doesn't have the striking or the submission threat that Lopez presented to Yahya in his last fight. I really like Tanaka's debut win over Delorme, where he dominated him with the wrestling. And against Kyung Ho Kang, I thought he won that fight but lost a decision. And it was back and forth. It was close. And his last fight against Joe Soto was not able to dominate him as easily as he did to his previous opponents with grappling. And I think a lot of people thought Soto won that fight. In the third round, Soto was able to keep it on the feet longer and started to land on him. And I think might have dropped him at one point in that third round, or at least was hitting him with hard shots. But yeah, Yahya has faced, at least, Matthew Lopez, who's a better grappler, and I feel like the level of competition Yahya has faced, Masanori Kanehara, those guys are really solid grapplers, and while Tanaka's a good scrambler, it just seems kind of like a lesser version of these other guys that Yahya has fought, and definitely not nearly as dangerous. And Yahya struggled a bit with Lopez. Lopez was able to win some scrambles, reverse position, I think attempted some submissions in that fight, and Yahya eventually got the submission, which he hadn't done in a long time. So I think he's still a really elite competitor, and got that submission win. I don't see Tanaka out grappling him or winning scrambles. I think Yahya controls him. I don't know if he submits him, but definitely at least wins a decision. All right, at lightweight, Gilbert Burns versus Michel Prazeres. This is one of the more meaningful fights, I think, on the card. I'm going to go with Burns. Initially, when I was analyzing this matchup, I thought that Prazeres, I liked him to win, because Burns, while he's a great submission artist, we haven't seen him put in a solid 3 rounds to win a sound decision against anybody. His striking is not there, We saw that against Oliveira. Was able to get the third round submission, but was just getting tagged and visibly hurt for that entire fight. And then Rashid Magomedov really outboxed him. Prazeres is not a good striker. He's not bad, but he's a very consistent wrestler. And the only guy to hold a win over Mirbek Taisumov in the UFC to date. So I was thinking that Prazeres could out-wrestle Burns and hold him down for 3 rounds. Prazeres is not a submission threat. I think he's been looking less impressive lately, especially the fight against Lazaro. I thought Lazaro won that fight and was out striking him. But with Prazeres, he's probably going to get Burns down early in the fight, and that's the only thing he can really do is control Burns for 3 rounds. That's how he wins his fights. With as much time as he's going to give Burns to work on the ground, I think eventually Burns will submit him because Burns is really a deadly submission fighter. So I don't think Prazeres can hold him down for 3 rounds. Prazeres has some cardio issues. We've seen Burns win in the 3rd round, like against Oliveira. And Prazeres doesn't have the striking to really give him problems. So I like Burns. Like I said, he's not a guy who's really built to win decisions, and we haven't seen him face a good wrestler or have to fend off takedowns. And Prazeres can definitely pressure guys and hit takedowns, and even went 3 rounds with Kevin Lee where he lost but didn't look terrible. I think there's a slight chance that he kind of grinds out Burns for 3 rounds, but he has to take Burns down to win, and Burns is great on the ground, so I think Burns will get that submission. As he's just been a more impressive fighter than Prazeres in his wins, so I like Burns. All right, onto the FS1 main card at featherweight. Go to Fredo Pepe versus Mike De La Torre. I really like Pepe here. I think he's just gonna pull guard like he's done several times before and get the submission, or even if he doesn't pull guard, do something to create a scramble and submit De La Torre, who we saw against Ortega can just be overwhelmed by a grappler. And in that fight, it didn't even touch the ground. Ortega clinched him, took his back standing and choked him out. De La Torre to me seems like a pretty one-dimensional fighter. Does have power. Knocked out Thiago Trator. But then he was knocked out in the 1st round by Maximo Blanco. And Pepe, he can land a knockout strike. Had that flying knee knockout against Noad Lahat. Has been stifled by solid wrestlers like Sam Sicilia, Felipe Arantes. Both of those guys got him down and pounded him out. And then his last fight with Darren Elkins, his submission game was stifled, but even against a good striker like Feely, was able to pull guard, submit him, and I feel like Feely's a craftier striker than De La Torre, so I like Pepe to probably come out, brawl with him, maybe touch him up a bit, but eventually pretty quickly get it to the ground and submit him. All right, at middleweight, Thiago Santos versus Eric Spicely. This fight to me, I don't know what this is. I mean, other than a fight to just ensure that Santos continues on his win streak and continues to look impressive. But this is a crazy mismatch. Santos should just wreck this guy, Spicely. And I don't really understand the push that Spicely's getting. Had a win on Tough the most recent season, but was losing that fight early on. And then I don't know why they gave him Sam Alvey, who just destroyed him and submitted him with a standing guillotine. And I don't know why he's getting Santos now, who's been on a tear and just looking great, and he's just beating guys who are, vets like Marquardt in his last fight, and much better, solid prospects like Theodorou. Santos stuffed his takedowns and beat him up on the feet. Santos is just a great technical Muay Thai striker, has a lot of power, and Spicely is an unathletic grappler who cannot get it to the ground and who doesn't seem to have any striking. So I don't know what this is. Santos should absolutely dominate another first round knockout for him. And I really don't understand, this push that the UFC is giving Spicely. At lightweight, Francisco Trinaldo versus Paul Felder. Good fight, good matchup. Should be a good test for both guys. But I like Trinaldo. Paul Felder had that great performance against Danny Castillo. Looked flawless, knocked him out, and since then hasn't really done anything. Well, in the loss to Barboza, I thought he was impressive. That was a really competitive, close fight. But then Ross Pearson just out-clinched this guy, grinded him out, completely outworked him. Darren Cruikshank was winning every facet of that fight. The striking was hitting takedowns on him. Felder came back in the third round to take his back and submit him, but was losing. And then the Berkman fight was really ugly. Not much happened, and Bergman could have easily gotten the nod in that fight. Really slow fight. And Trinaldo has just been on a tear. Has been very impressive for a guy who competed at middleweight on tough Brazil, and then has fought at lightweight in the UFC. I remember that first fight he had against, or maybe second fight against Gleison Tibau. He was throwing up afterwards, and has had cardio problems like in the Piotr Hallman fight where he was doing well but then got submitted. He's really not shown cardio problems. Just look at his last fight with Yancy Medeiros, and for an old guy, just went 3 hard rounds, just totally dominating this guy, able to close range and just batter him from inside. Against Pearson also, mixing up his wrestling with his striking, just very aggressive, can close distance, and then in the pocket, he's just tearing guys up. So Trinaldo's been on a real tear, and before that had a really impressive finish over Chad Laprise. So I like Trinaldo here. I don't think he's going to finish Felder, but yeah, we saw Felder out-clinched by Ross Pearson. Trinaldo's a bigger, more physically imposing fighter than that. I think in the clinch he can dominate. I like Trinaldo. Felder, he likes all the unorthodox, dynamic strikes, but doesn't really have a fundamental boxing game really at all. I think Trinaldo, he's going to be able to take his space away and outbox him like he did to Medeiros or Pearson, hit takedowns on him as well. But Felder, with those unorthodox strikes, there is a chance that he lands something on Trinaldo and puts him out, especially late in the fight. Trinaldo hasn't shown cardio problems lately, but I think that's still a possibility. So I could see Felder, knocking him out in the third round or even early, just catching him with a wild, unpredictable strike. But for the most part, I think Trinaldo just takes away that distance, grinds him against the fence and just pummels him from the pocket. So I like Trinaldo for a decision. At heavyweight, Roy Nelson versus Antonio Bigfoot Silva. This is a terrible fight. Bigfoot Silva should not be allowed to fight anymore. Just pull up his record and take a look at all the guys who've just either knocked him out or dealt an incredible amount of damage to him. Watching him go down the way he did against Stefan Struve, just both guys, or Stefan Struve running at him, from the opening bell and just, throwing his strikes, knocking him out. that convinced me that I should just never take Silva really in any matchup anymore. The guy just has a complete glass chin. And Nelson, well, he's been on a decline, I think on a 3-fight losing streak, and his athleticism is waning. Technically he's never been a really good striker, but he still showed up against Derek Lewis, made that a fight. I thought he would get finished actually in the fight. He didn't. Still got outstruck and really had to rely on his wrestling. And I don't know what that was against Jared Rochold, a pretty terrible performance from Nelson, but I don't see any other outcome than Nelson just walking him down and just landing a bomb on him and putting him out, very early in the fight. So Nelson by first round KO, absolutely. No way that Bigfoot wins this fight. I will be completely shocked and in disbelief if he does. Co-main event at featherweight, Renan Barao versus Felipe Nover. I don't like this matchup. I like tune-up fights. I do. Barao needs one, but this is just an extreme case of a tune-up fight. I don't want to say Nover's a complete, but won a very uneventful, ugly decision against Yui Chul Nam in his debut or in his return fight to the UFC. And then his last fight against Zubair Tukhugov did do a lot better than I expected him to in that fight. I think hit some takedowns and on the feet. It was pretty closely contested, and Tukhugov had really torn through some guys before that, like Ernest Chavez in his fight before with really dynamic striking. And Nover had a pretty closely contested fight with him, but lost that fight. I don't see how Nover has any success. Barao should be able to take him down, dominate him on the mat, on the feet, should still be able to dominate him. I don't think Barao's ever going to be the same as he was before he lost his belt to Dillashaw. I think he's, the damage, the two stoppage losses has affected him. But even against Stevens, who's a very dangerous striker, Barao was not put out and wasn't even really seriously hurt in that fight. It seemed to not have the cardio and wilted, but survived against Jeremy Stevens. That's still, that's not an easy thing to do, and even won the first round against him. Barao should absolutely dominate. I think he probably takes him down and submits him. Will fight more conservatively than he did, back before he lost to Dillashaw. Against Gagnon after the first Dillashaw loss, he was more conservative, but still, had the grappling skill to take him down and submit him. So I think that's what Barao does here to Nover. So I'm taking Barao by submission. I don't see any way Nover wins. And then the main event, Cyborg versus Lena Lansberg. I don't have anything to say about the fight. Cyborg, I had never really watched any of her fights ever before her UFC debut against Leslie Smith, except for maybe one fight after the fact. I think maybe it was her fight, or maybe second to last fight before coming to the UFC. And Lena Lansberg, I have no idea who she is. But I picked Cyborg, I think, by decision against Leslie Smith in her debut, and I got some hate for that. I didn't realize, how great she is. But yeah, I really liked what she did against Smith. I didn't realize, the technique in her striking and the power, the volume. It was a really nice performance against Leslie Smith, who I don't think is a bad fighter in the UFC women's bantamweight division. But she completely dominated her and very violently and convincingly finished her. I don't know if Lansberg is better or worse than Smith. But, I haven't heard of her, and I wouldn't assume that she's on the level of Cyborg. So I would assume Cyborg gets another win, but I don't know, because I don't know Lansberg, and even Cyborg, I have not followed her career. Okay, those are my predictions for UFC Fight Night 95. Thank you guys for watching. Again, check out my video for Fight Night 94, Poirier versus Johnson. If you haven't seen that already, it'll be linked in the description. Follow me on Twitter at MMA Breakdown 0. That's in the description. Yeah, that's it. I'll see you in my next video. I believe the next event is, I believe it's Lineker versus Dodson. I think there's also another fight night before UFC 204. But yeah, I'll be back with the next couple of vids, maybe in a week or so. But thanks, guys. Take care, and I'll see you next time. Bye.